Okay, listen up. Don't get caught in the daily play-by-play. It's important for us to be informed, but if we're only following the headlines, we are going to miss the bigger story of what's going on. Last night, Israel carried out one of the most complex military operations in its modern history. It wasn't a reaction, it wasn't revenge, it was a long game strategy over a decade in the making, and finally it was put in motion. At one point, Israel's entire air force was airborne. Every plane, every pilot, all in the sky, and that alone should tell you how important this was. And what made it even more incredible was the deception behind it. Now, hear me out. When I was a teenager, I was fascinated by the story of Joshua, and specifically in chapter 8, the defeat of Ai. After an earlier loss, God gives Joshua a new plan. He says, pretend to retreat, draw the enemy out of the city, and while they're chasing you, send another force in around the back to take the city from behind. And it was brilliant, totally unexpected, and it worked. But watching what Israel just did over the last 24 hours, it felt like that. In the days leading up to the strike, Israel ran a coordinated deception campaign. Netanyahu's office told reporters that he was going on a quiet family vacation in the Galilee. They floated the idea that he would be at his son's wedding next week. There was also a statement released saying that top officials were flying to Washington for nuclear talks that don't even exist. There was even a staged leak suggesting that there was tension between Netanyahu and Trump, and all of it was designed to lower Iran's guard. And then late last night, Thursday night, the Israeli Security Cabinet met. Publicly, the meeting was about hostage negotiations. But once the doors closed, every minister was handed a secret agenda and signed a non-disclosure agreement. The real mission was approved. And just hours later, Israel launched. Key nuclear sites, surface-to-air missiles, high-ranking IRGC officials, senior nuclear scientists, targets that had been watched and tracked for years were gone in moments. This wasn't impulse, it was discipline. And it may have just bought the world critical time that it needs. But don't expect the world to say thank you. In fact, some of the backlash has already started. You're going to hear voices. I'm already hearing voices, even from our own government, saying that Israel was the aggressor, that Iran was engaging in negotiations, that diplomacy was working. And let's be honest, Iran has a long history of shaking your hand with one hand while enriching uranium with the other. Here's what's even harder to swallow. The story that should be told, that a tiny country of 10 million just protected hundreds of millions from a nuclear threat, won't be the story the world tells. Instead, what we're going to hear is condemnation, accusation, and more pressure placed on Israel. Remember, this is spiritual. This is not just political. Because if the enemy can erase God's chosen people, he believes that he can undermine God himself. But let me say it clearly, God will not be undermined. Not by Iran, not by the media, not by political spin. This is not just a geopolitical moment. It's what we call a theopolitical moment. So yes, watch what's happening, pay attention, but more importantly, ask what God is doing. Because now's not the time for outrage or panic. Now's the time to go into your prayer closet, shut the door, and draw near to Jesus. He's not pacing in heaven. He's not nervous about global events. He's in control. His kingdom is better. His plan is unfolding. One day, the prophets say that swords will be beaten into plowshares. I'd like to think that tanks will be melted into tools that give life, and maybe drones and fighter jets will be dismantled and repurposed to farm the fields of a restored and better earth. But until then, we have to stay awake. We have to stay alert, and we have to stay close to the King. So yes, be informed, be engaged, but don't be distracted. The Lord doesn't just want you to be right about the conflict. He wants our hearts. So be a light, be a voice, and be a blessing. And as we tell the story of Israel, let's never lose sight of the bigger story that God is telling through her.